Hello and welcome to It's Your Voice. I am your host, Anita DeFrancesco, and this is episode 14. Our topic is Relationship Sabotage. This program was born, the title, It's Your Voice, out of the DonnaGentileStory.com, about a woman who was silenced, who had a lot of relationship issues and was murdered. Similar to the Gabby Petito case that's happening right now and makes me think about relationship sabotage. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But what I wanted to say that also this program is a compilation of topics under the subjects of mindfulness, sexuality, and relationships. And it's dedicated to all the voiceless women of the world. May your voice be heard. So let's start with why relationship sabotage. And I'm going to quote psychoanalyst Erik Erikson, who laid the foundation of understanding this dynamic. First of all, we learn to trust ourselves and others. That is a learned behavior. But that is something that you have to inhabit in your body, in your somatic body, about trusting. Self-expression and initiative are valued or to be suppressed. So somewhere in between there, we're suppressing and we're initiating. So we sort of have to come above the water there, right? When I think about Gabby Petito and the boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, how there was a lot of suppression there, and she was kind of wanting to be initiating. She was in her van, taking control, going on the road trip, and he took the keys from her. When I saw the video, when they got stopped by the police, how she was saying she had OCD, which is something she probably didn't have. She just had anxiety, and she was fearful of this guy, getting into her car with dirty shoes, something like that. But we'll talk more about that. So getting back to the Erik Erikson foundation of the relationship sabotaging here, we learn to feel worthy or confident or ashamed and guilty of who we are. Okay, so there's somewhere again in between this pendulum that you learn how to understand your worth and own it, or do you melt, or you hang out in that shame and guilt? So where do you want to be? Somewhere in between. So we have to keep working, because there's a lot of transference that we pick up from our families, et cetera, and we have to keep working and climbing the ladder. Now the lessons that form, these lessons form the core of our own belief system. But then again, the belief system, is it right? Is it wrong? There's this reservoir in your body, and it's the core of who you are. But is it right? Is it wrong? We need to tap in. We need to reflect. Responsive caregivers, like your parents or your teachers at school, they teach us that we can depend on those we love. And this is not, they teach us that, but can you really depend on people you love? Does codependency set in? What's your emotional character that you would become fixated or codependent on someone, or needy? Or maybe not any of those things, but your parents were so great and you depended on them for love. You need to start looking into that, because we have to firstly self-love and depend on the self. This is the beginning of trust, when the parents accept and discipline. They accept and discipline us, and they teach us that we are worthy and deserving, if you are lucky to get that in your upbringing. Those who encourage your self-expression, your creativeness, teach us that we're capable. But this Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie case, it was like all of a sudden, when she got out of the car and started saying, he doesn't believe in me, that I can be a blogger. She's new on the scene, coming out, a girl her age, 22, and he was dismissing her. He was ridiculing her. He was controlling her. He was obsessing her. He was a total sociopath. And look at the way it ended up. Because he didn't encourage her, because she would grow and he'd be afraid of losing her. Now, a relationship like this, if they're twin flames or true soulmates, I thought it would have been best that they separated. The police did separate them for an evening. But I think that that should have been the wake-up call right there, that they needed to separate, period. Go out with others. You have to get out there and get on the edge and get rugged and work the relationship scene out there and learn and grow. You can't just go out with one person because you can get married, and then what's going to happen later on, they're going to want to go out because they didn't grow in the way of dating. It's important. So exploring the patterns in failed relationships. Now, we have a lot of patterns that we keep repeating. If you go out with an abusive person, chances are the next one will be abusive, and vice versa. So you have to look at this. We need to get the help that we need. The psychotherapy, this is how you help yourself. You go to counseling. So the exploring these patterns in the failed relationship, they provide us clues to our deepest beliefs. But if you don't explore them, you don't look at them, you've got to wake up. There's transference here. Awareness, presence. Recurrent themes in your early memories. Your parents told you no one wanted to marry you. No one will date you. You're ugly, or you're a nothing. All these negative voices that come into that repeat in the head chatter. So these are the voices that come in, and they come into your relationship when you're with that special one that you met, that you want to have something with. So these behaviors, they sabotage it. These, not the behaviors, but it's the chatter in your head that sabotages that. Now, one of the most profound things in any relationship that can sabotage it is the influences of your friends. You get influenced by friends, and sometimes your best friend is your enemy. We like to air out our dirty laundry. He did this, she did that, yada, yada, yada. But if your friends or your best friends or any friends or any people or even your parents aren't there to support and say, hey, these things happen, you'll work it out, I'm here for you. If they diss it and say, get rid of her, get rid of him, you want to get away from them because they're jealous and they're vampires and their misery wants company and they're fixated on you and they're zapping you of your power. Unrealistic expectations. Dawn M. Williams from Everyday Health quoted some of these things. I'm quoting her, or she wrote some of this stuff. Women expect perfection from their partner. Oh, yes, they do. They set up the scenario of the knight in shining armor. Reminds me of the movie Pretty Woman with Julia Roberts and Richard Gere. She said, had that, he came with the horse, the knight in shining armor. Well, it's a movie, but it can be done. But you have to get a little more realistic. I don't think he's going to show up with a horse. Do you find fault in the things that he or she says and does over and over? If you're criticizing, pointing the finger, like that Brian Laundrie was doing to Gabby Petito, he was finding so much fault in her that she blamed herself. She believed she had OCD, and she didn't. She don't even know what OCD is. She was just saying that. He was probably telling her, you're crazy, you're crazy. And that's a thing that men or women do to their partner, just to put them down and make them think there's something wrong with them and they're the blame. It's the narcissistic, psychopathic behaviors that step in and rule one's brain and mind, and they want to, project it onto someone else. And so the thing is, if you find fault in things he or she does over and over, you need to step back. Have you found yourself wishing he or she would be different? We have to come back to the Tantric Bubble, the Serenity Bubble, and make a list of what you can live with and cannot live with. Well, if the person's a marijuana smoker, can you live with that? Get your scales, weigh it out. Or if they're the type of person that doesn't want to go to work, but you need that person to work, in the relationship. So if there's more positive in the scales, when you weigh the scales out, then you can be in the relationship, and the other things you can work on if they're not too hard to work on. So a lot of the things can, create an emotional weigh down. So that's why you want to have this sacred space where you come together and discuss your likes and dislikes, what I need more of, what I can change, what I'd like to change in the relationship. Now, there's a chronic mistrust also that sabotages relationships. The chronic mistrust is something that sometimes you have a suspicion for no reason, or they go away and you feel like you have to question them all the time. So you have to look back at your past relationships and see, are you feeling that insecurity because it happened in the last relationship? the fear of the partner lying, developing this pseudo paranoia. And then your partner will start to call you paranoia and make you think. But then again, stay above the water here, because betrayal, remember, comes in many colors, not just cheating. If your partner wants to have an affair or just go out and have sex, that's betrayal in one way, and you will sense that. And that's the biggest one. But the other betrayals are when they belittle you, when they don't support you. Like example, Gabby Petito. Brian Laundrie was betraying her in every moment from the beginning of that van road trip all the way to the end. He betrayed her, even with the murder, if indeed he was the murderer. But the abuse all the way, taking her power. You can't be a blogger, etc., etc. That was all betrayal. That's worse than him or her cheating on you. So now, your past experiences may be influencing your lens. So I need you to look at your past experiences. Silencing the self. First of all, there's this lack of communication that always happens in a relationship, and we tend to act on our worst impulses. But your relationship should be based on a genuine connection. And you want to be free to express yourself, to say what's on your mind, to respectfully express your needs and feelings. And do you hide your feelings and opinions from your partner, or fail to ask for what you want? Or are you the go along, get along? Well, if you've done the transformational work and the politics and all the characteristic ego voices coming up, shouting out, don't bother you, then be the go along, get along. But if all that other stuff is there with one of the partners, then they need more work. And you still should be able to express and say what it is that you need to say and share. It's called sharing, folks. Remember, you're a team in a relationship. So when these friends come in and they want to sabotage you, you're a team. He and her, you're a team. So even if you do step out and go air out the dirty laundry and you hate each other for 2 weeks, don't go against each other. You're still a team. You may. So there's another thing. Shame prevents the girls from speaking their minds and asserting themselves because they're losing themselves in the relationship. They're taught to be nurturers. And, often we're not taught how to honor our own needs. So in Tantra wisdom, I teach you how to do what we call giving and receiving. Now, the giving is great, but you don't want to be an overgiver. And the receiving is great if you receive from the heart. But if you become an open hand and a taker, that's a problem. So we want to keep the receiving from the heart, not like opening the hand and taking. And in the relationships, these things can happen. So you must be, relationships are work, and you must continually work them, because the character is not designed, the human character, the psychological being is not designed to be on the grid of trust and honesty forever. We're going to fall off, and there's going to be a lot of forgiveness, a lot of acceptance, repetitively, over and over again in any relationship. You may believe that your self-worth is based on what you do for others. Well, for example, you may feel like you have to have a higher education to have a self-worth, and others are going to like you for that or judge you. It is not about that worth is not based on what you do for others. You want to do for others from your heart. Stay connected to that place, because these are the hidden body pains that take away from the authenticity. Do you compromise your own needs to accommodate your partner? And a lot of us do this. So much, especially women. You're listening to It's Your Voice. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, episode number 14, Relationship Sabotage. Sometimes we compromise our own needs to accommodate the partner. Sometimes they want you to give up your friends and not be friendly with your family. Why? Your family or your friends may awaken you to see something that you're not seeing, because love is blind. So it is important to stay connected to your family and friends and share your relationship with them, because they can alert you of something you may not see. But don't compromise your own needs. For your partner, it should be done dualistically, meeting halfway. Yes. Inspiring each other, connecting. Meeting halfway is the key. You feel guilty for taking time for yourself? if that's the case, you really need to work on yourself, because the relationship, again, should be where you're balanced, you're connected. You're not, I mean, we're all going to have some kind of guilt, shame, hiding, even feeling like the fool. But the relationship is there to heal. Failing to set boundaries. We need healthy boundaries. Because sometimes there's irregular behaviors that jump out. That voice, that child voice comes out. And the person is surfacing, emerging from pain because they're opening up to you. And if you want to keep opening up to each other more emotionally, you have to express. There has to be expression in the relationship, verbal. So failing to set the boundaries is as damaging to the relationships as it is to you. Now, also be on the lookout for wrong characters, choosing the wrong mate, listening. Don't ignore the positive feedback that people may give you and say he or she is not so great, or it's toxic, it looks toxic. And I think about Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie again, and how there might have been some messages from both their parents about how toxic their fighting was. I just don't think that that band trip was the first time they had, that was the escalation of their arguing, and it ended up in murder. But I think all along there was toxicity there, and there was a lot of arguing and anger and pushing, and I'm sure he's pushed her and hit her over the course of the time. And so maybe the parents did step in, but they ignored the positive feedback. And one last thing, projecting insecurities. I know it's hard if you have your insecurities. It's transference. So again, it's that emotional weigh down that you want to feel emboldened, independent, coming back into yourself. But those insecurities need to be looked at. You need to cry. Crying is a good thing, and going to therapy. And this is, so people want to know how they help themselves. Well, the way you help yourself is you get into some coaching, love and relationship coaching I offer, tantrawisdom.com. You can get into psychotherapy. I'm a psychotherapist, all of it, so that you can inspire yourself and inspire your partner. I'm going to leave you with one statement that by Maya Angelou. Love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. Maya Angelou. Thank you for tuning in to It's Your Voice. I'm your host, Anita DeFrancesco, and this is episode 14, Relationship Sabotage. TantraWisdom.com, you can find me, and the DonnaGentileStory.com is the true crime book about the woman who had her sabotaged relationships over and over and ended up in murder. So you can find that it's a book I wrote on Amazon.